I worked at a local gas station, usually night shifts. I'd been there for over 6 years. Of all the craziness and strange characters and things I'd seen throughout my time working there, nothing even compares to what happened a few months ago. Just for a reference of the place I worked at, it's a gas station that I'd describe as being on the outskirts of the city. Not necessarily remote, but past the gas station, there was nothing for a good 20 miles. It was the place people stopped at to fill up right when entering or just before leaving town. This was in the beginning of winter, and this night it was snowing a decent amount. Enough to keep most folks home, but truckers and whatnot would still be coming through. Nothing about this night was out of the usual for the first couple of hours. I stayed behind the counter, saving all the other work for later, when I knew it'd be dead. Around 1 a.m., I got a call on the store phone. We almost never get calls, especially overnight. The only calls I'd sometimes get were from my manager to let me know something he forgot to tell me just a few minutes after he left. I saw this was from an unknown number. I picked it up and asked if I could help them. While I was talking, and for a few seconds afterward, I heard a man talking in the background, and the audio kept cutting out too, like when wind is hitting the microphone. "Hello, anyone there?" This time, no one spoke. I knew it wasn't dead though, because I could still hear the mic crackling. After a few more seconds, I hung up. It didn't feel like a prank call, but it also didn't feel like an accidental dial. Someone was on the other end, just listening. I didn't think too hard about it. 10 minutes later, I'd pretty much forgotten it happened. Starting to feel bored, and seeing the snow was starting to stack up, I threw my coat on and rolled the maintenance cart out to the gas pumps to do all the cleaning and everything before it got too bad out. It was cold and icy out, and the wind only seemed to be picking up. As I was moving between each of the pumps, I felt really uneasy. Something about how quiet and dark it was out there had me feeling off. Kinda like every time I was doing something, it felt like something was behind me. Usually being out there at night didn't bother me, so the fact I was feeling strange this night was really odd. I remember being aware of how uneasy I was, and thinking in the moment how in all 6 years I'd worked there, this was the one time I'd felt this way, without any reason. Which then made me think there had to be a reason. I looked around. The roads were empty, and even the town, as far as I could see, looked asleep and quiet. I finished doing what I was doing and hurried up and got back inside, warming up and scratching my head at what just happened out there. As soon as I was inside though, the feeling went away. I thought maybe I was just tired, so I grabbed an iced coffee from the fridge and sipped on it to wake myself up. It was weirdly dead for the next hour. I think it was 2 a.m., so of course it was always dead around this time, but not seeing a single car or truck come through was weird. I started the rest of the work stuff that I had to get done, mostly stocking and reorganizing a bunch of shelves to prep for a delivery in the morning. While stocking, the phone started ringing again. I took a second, then started walking over to the counter, but just before I picked up, the call dropped. I stood there and looked at the phone for a minute, really confused. My mind instantly thought back to the first phone call from an hour ago. I tried to shake it off again and get back to work, walking back to the aisle, but as I passed by the front doors, I saw someone outside. He was far back, walking through the snow toward the building. I couldn't tell which direction he came from, but he was definitely heading in here. 30 seconds later, he walked in. I looked up from the shelf and greeted him, but stuttered halfway through when I saw his face. He looked at me with dead eyes and a narrow frown. He did not look friendly at all. The guy was pretty big too, 6 foot something with broad shoulders, and just overall an intimidating appearance. I moved from the aisle back to the counter. The man didn't speak, but made his way through the shop, sort of snaking through the aisles very slowly. He was looking at the stuff on the shelves, but it was almost like he wasn't really looking for anything. And as I watched him, I got this weird feeling that he wasn't alone. I kept checking out the windows, looking at the dark, snowy parking lot, and almost waiting for someone else to appear. The longer this went on, the more uneasy I felt. Best way I can explain the feeling was like my body knew this was the calm before the storm. Everything felt even quieter, too. My whole body felt like it was preparing for something to happen. And then, suddenly, something shifted. The man was looking over the shelves at me, and this time, when I made eye contact, he didn't look away. He held his gaze. After a moment, I looked away, moving my eyes toward the window, and immediately noticed someone out there. I only caught a glimpse of them, moving right past the window and around to the side of the building. I looked back at the man inside. He was still staring at me, and although he didn't say anything, his eyes were telling me to not move or do anything. I was sure if I even tried to pick up the phone, or tried to run, this guy would pull out a weapon and stop me. Not a minute later, I heard a thump on the back door, followed by a few more, and then a heavy metal cracking sound. The other guy had broken into the back of the building. Now, even in the moment, I was really confused. He wasn't being sneaky by bashing down the door, so why didn't he just walk in through the front of the building? The man in front of me was still staring at me, while the other was rummaging through something in the back room for a while. Then he appeared in the doorway. He looked furious, glaring at me, and then glaring at the other guy. Oddly, he didn't enter the main shopping area though. He stayed right in the doorway. But as soon as the other guy saw him, he essentially charged toward me. I muttered whatever helpless words I could to try to de-escalate, but the guy grabbed me and basically dragged me into the back room. Both of these dudes were way bigger than I was, and probably armed, so I had no chance at fighting. When we got to the back room, everything was ransacked, but the men didn't stop there. They dragged me out the door. By this point, both of them were holding on to me and forcing me across the back of the building until we got to the edge of the parking lot. Beyond that point was a field of scattered trees, and really nothing else. I was still trying to plead with them, but it was like they couldn't even hear me. Whatever they were doing, they'd already made up their minds on. This was all planned. They forced me through the snow far away from the gas station. I mean, probably a quarter-mile through the deep snow, to where I couldn't even see the building anymore. We were just in the middle of the trees. Then, suddenly, they tossed me on the ground, my face planted in the snow, and I waited in horror. I was scared to turn around, thinking I'd be looking into the barrel of a gun. But after a few seconds, I heard them take a few footsteps and started walking away. I still didn't trust it. I waited a whole minute before looking behind me. They were gone. I stayed there for a few minutes, knowing I couldn't just run up behind them, but also I was freezing. It was around 10 degrees outside, and I didn't have my coat on, or snow boots, or gloves. I think they really did leave me out there to die. Eventually, the cold was so numbingly painful that I had to run back. I followed the tracks from the men all the way back to the gas station, and with no signs of them outside, I quietly got close up to the building. I couldn't hear anything inside. I wrapped around to the front and saw through the windows that no one was in there, and finally ran in and called the police. Thinking on how planned everything felt by the two men, I was sure that even with a description of them, neither would be found. But the cops actually did find one of them, the one that came into the shop. The security cameras had a good enough view of his face to get an identity. However, the other guy never stepped foot in that area of the building. He stayed in the back, where there weren't any cameras. And this one guy that they did find didn't speak a word about his accomplice. In fact, he basically said nothing at all as to what they were doing. And even stranger is that nothing of value was really missing. The obvious stuff, like the cash in the register, was still there. With the entire back room ransacked, though, the guy was definitely looking for something. Something specific. that he probably found and got away with. To put a bow on top of this whole thing, I asked my manager, who is the owner of the gas station, about why he thinks they broke in and what they were looking for. But he started acting really weird after that, straight up asking why I was even asking that, as if I didn't just go through a whole ordeal and almost lose my life because of it. And a few weeks later, I woke up to a call from him firing me. I was given severance pay and everything, so it was all technically legal, but extremely suspicious. After working there and knowing him for 6 years, suddenly cutting me off after a simple question was odd to say the least. Something else was going on there that I wasn't aware of, and I think he didn't like that I was trying to figure it out. Honestly though, I just feel lucky to be alive after that.